Hi guys.
Good morning.
I see a few new faces here. That's awesome. Welcome to Enon today. It feels really, really good to be back here. I missed you guys, and I know Katie and the kids and their love. So just imagine you're at home. It's really late and it's pitch black outside, and you put all the kids to sleep already. You decide to stay up for a little bit to fold some laundry and catch up on your favorite show. You throw some popcorn in the microwave, peek in to find that your wife is asleep, another check on the kids, yes, they're still asleep, and suddenly the phone rings and you look up and it's 1:20 a.m. Who's calling at this hour? And so you figure it's probably just somebody scamming you, one of those robot voices, and so you click ignore and move on. The popcorn is done, so you throw it in a bowl, and you start to walk to the couch, and then the phone rings again. This time, it's the same number, and you decide to answer. Hello? No answer. Hello? Who is this? You ask, because you hear somebody on the other end, obviously breathing. And after a few seconds of nothing but the sound of their breath, you hear them take a big breath through their nose, like they're smelling something deep. And with a scratchy voice, you hear them say, "I can't resist the smell of popcorn." Your eyes grow large, your heart pounds, and before you can reply, you hear a crash at your back door, and you believe somebody is breaking in. Welcome to the Halloween edition of church. I'm just kidding. I thought about turning the lights off and having Doug hide somewhere, and whenever I said there was a crash, having him bang against the door. But I don't want to give anybody nightmares in here, and we all know Doug's too tall anyway to hide from us. So David's been teaching on these messages of parenting this month, and covering important issues like discipline, parenting with love and with purpose and with priorities, and raising children up in a way that is pleasing to God. And today I'm going to be finishing this month's series on Christian parenting, and we're going to be talking about protecting our families. And I think as parents, caregivers, and influencers, and most of us influence somebody else in our lives, whether we know it or not, we know that nothing is more important than the safety of our children. In so many things that I do, I am actively protecting my kids, their present and their future. I am planning for protection with every breath that I take. And parents, not just parents, but anyone out here who's an influencer, we all have boldly declared this month, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So what does that mean for us as Christians, as holy people called out, as these people who are set apart, as people who are supposed to be noticeably different than the rest of the world? How does God want us to protect our children, our most valuable assets? There's a story about the late American evangelist D.L. Moody, and he arrived home late one evening from preaching a revival service. As the tired Moody climbed into bed, his wife rolled over and asked, "So how did it go tonight?" Moody replied, "Pretty well. 2.5 converts." His wife smiled and said, "Oh, that's sweet. How old was the child?" He said, No. It was 2 children and 1 adult. The children have their whole lives in front of them." Too often people view children in the same manner as Moody's wife. And instead of treasuring our little ones as God does, we often consider their value as secondary to adults. This devaluing of children often leaves them exposed to indescribable harms that have physical, emotional, and spiritual consequences. Wes Stafford, president of Compassion International, perhaps puts it most accurately when he writes, "Small, weak, helpless, and innocent, vulnerable and trusting, they are waiting victims for our simple neglect and most evil abuse. No matter what goes wrong, the children always seem to pay the biggest price." We can never fully protect our children until we value him as God does. Psalm 127 puts it like this: children are a heritage from the Lord. Offspring are a reward from him. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They are a heritage from God. They are a reward. And we are called to be good stewards of all that God provides, especially our little ones. And how we view our children will say a lot about how we take care of these most precious assets. And we can see how Jesus, our most perfect example of how we should live our lives, we can see how much he valued children. And so today in your Bibles, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 18, and we're going to be starting in chapter 2. Matthew 18:2, it reads, Jesus called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. And such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. Pretty strong words here. And Jesus is saying it's better to have a concrete block tied around you and walk the plank into the ocean than it is to cause one of these little ones to stumble. And I think when Jesus says, those who believe in me, he's talking about all of us, all the believers. But woe to those especially that cause the most vulnerable of us to fall and stumble. Keep in mind that children had zero status in this society. A Roman official at that time wrote a letter to his pregnant wife and told her, if it's a son, keep him. If it's a daughter, drown her. One Bible commentary says that some corrupt people would collect exposed children and raise them to be gladiators or prostitutes, or they would even disfigure them to enhance their value as beggars. But here's Jesus in the middle of this culture, and he says that we should value them above all else. And Jesus made time for children. He set an example for them. He spoke up for them. He blessed them one by one, and he empowered them. He places so much value on children that he goes on to say that we should actually become like children, which kind of sounds like fun in a sense. You know, Saturdays we don't have to do yard work all day. We can just play. There's no more bills to pay. But then I remember how merciless fourth grade bullies on the playground can be. And I'm thinking maybe I don't want to go back, right? Like, there is nothing more savage than a little boy surrounded by a pack of friends and they're all bent on messing with somebody. But he says we should become like a child. And I think we truly can learn a lot from children. You see, adults, we take ourselves way too seriously. If your child is pretending he's a superhero, fighting off the bad guys, man, throw on that cape and fly around with him and shoot your laser gun at him. It is good for your soul, and you're making good memories together. There are so many spiritual lessons we can learn from children. Like being genuine with God and with other people. Like with a kid, maybe to a fault, they don't hold back what they're really feeling. I'm sure all the parents of young kids here have been totally embarrassed by what your little kid has called out somebody. Hello, are you pregnant? We've been looking at houses recently, and Silas went with Katie to one of them, and it was a for sale by owner, this split-level ranch. And so the owner was showing them around, and Silas is following her around, and she takes one step down into the lower level of the split-level ranch, and she said, now here's the basement. And Silas immediately calls her out, and he says, lady, this is not a basement. He's like, we only took one step down from the main floor. Like, it's right there. And he said, if there's a tornado that comes, we are not going to be safe down here. Lady, do not call this a basement. I mean, they're not always wrong, but there's, we can hold ourselves back a little bit. Kids also, they don't try to merit their salvation. Like if you offer Josie a cookie, she doesn't wonder what she did to deserve it. She just smiles and thanks you for it. There's my cookie. I got it. But we as adults, we learn and we teach about Jesus' life and how he offers us this free gift of salvation. But we constantly get in our own way. And we believe that surely we don't really deserve it because of all the sin in our lives. And come on, guys, just take the cookie and eat it, right? Children are also very easily trusting, which might not always be a great thing. But when it comes to having faith in Jesus, they have that figured out. They don't try to overcomplicate it. They take what is taught about Jesus and they hold on to that. And I remember when I was a kid, we grew up in Owensville, and our house was cut in a quarter mile straight into the woods. And so our house was surrounded by the forest, and our family, we had different houses through the woods. And so I would have to walk home in the pitch black from my cousin's house. And, I'm 8 years old, and that can be kind of scary. And I remember my prayers to God at that time to give me strength and courage. And I remember saying those words and just knowing that God was going to protect me from whatever animals out there that was hungry for a little boy as a nighttime snack. Becoming childlike is the key to entering the kingdom of heaven. And while we don't want to be immature, innocence, trust, and having that genuine character are all traits that Jesus wants us to have as Christians. An older preacher was talking about the struggle he had with raising his hands in church in praise. And he struggled, feeling that raising his hands might look silly. And maybe sometimes we worry about that. Will people think you look silly if you raise your hands up in church? The preacher struggled with that for some time, until one day he was at his daughter's home with his daughter and granddaughter. When his little granddaughter's father came home, she ran up to the door, arms up and hands in the air, yelling, "Daddy." And he suddenly realized that's exactly what God wanted from him. Arms up, hands in the air, saying, "Father." He said he never struggled with raising his hands to God again. Because God wanted him to come as a child, trusting, innocent, arms reached out in faith. And without a doubt, when we come to Jesus as his children, he will take us up in his arms, just as he did with the little children, and bless us. Children, they matter. Our kids, they matter so much. They are central to the mission, and they must be protected. It is a tremendous blessing to love, serve, and protect the most vulnerable of us, our little ones, our babies. I can't say this about many people, but I would take a bullet for any one of my kids. I would allow my life to end just so theirs could continue. My whole life is spent protecting them. Now, in case you're wondering, life with 5 kids and 3 of them triplet girls, 6 months old, our lives are totally crazy. Like, imagine how crazy it is, and then multiply that. I'm not even sure that words can describe it. There is no time, there's not 1 second in any day where Katie and I are not thinking about or actually doing what needs to be done for them. Making bottles alone is a full-time job. I wake up however many times in the night I need to soothe one or more of the babies. And I had my alarm set for 6:30 this morning. Ellie said, "You're getting up at 4:30 today, Dad," and that's it. She just didn't want to be put back down, so I held her and soothed one or more of the babies at night and to hold them. That's just what we do every night. And no matter how busy we get in our schedules, if we have to get to church at 8 in the morning, we still have to make sure that Silas gets all of his 12 medicines and that he does his 2 breathing treatments every day. No matter what we're doing. Because that's how we protect his health. And we never forget how important it is to spend time with Josie, helping her learn to read. And guys, she's getting it. Like, she's a good reader. And to ensure that she feels loved and cherished. All of our kids have their unique needs, each ways that we can protect them. Parents, it's just what we do. I've had a lot of people ask me, how can you deal with triplets and a son with cystic fibrosis? And I said, you love your kids? You find a way to do it too. My father always told me, when you have kids, your life is no longer about you. It's not. And he's not saying that we shouldn't take care of ourselves physically or spiritually, because healthy dad means a happy family. Like, I got to take care of myself to take care of others. What he's saying is that there's a new priority in life. And it's not me. It's not the mom, and it's not the dad. My hopes, dreams, and desires, even my daily comforts, don't matter as much anymore. We take all that hope for ourselves and our futures, and we place them on our kids. So as the father of my house, my number one priority is to be the protector of my family. Nothing matters more to me than keeping my loved ones safe. Parents, that's both mothers and fathers. We are the protectors of our children. I am a protector. So parents, influencers, say it with me. I'm a protector. I'm a protector. Now say it and kind of beat on your chest like you really mean it. I'm a protector. I was practicing my Sylvester Stallone accent, and it just sounded like I've been drinking too much. I think that nails it, though. Maybe. I don't know. That's right. Ain't nobody messing with our house. Not today. Not my kids. And a lot of times when we think of protecting our children, we think of those scenarios like the story I brought up in the beginning. I'm sure you guys were wondering how that would make sense with all this. But we think of protecting our kids, we think of, what am I going to do if somebody breaks into our house? And I can't tell you how many times that night I've lied awake in bed and heard like a noise outside. And my dad's senses start kicking in, and suddenly I feel like Rambo, you know? My heart starts pounding, and I start to plan this protection strategy. And here's what happens. In my mind, this is how it's going to go down. Okay, so I get out of bed, and I kind of cat crawl around, and I get in a dark corner, and then I pounce on them, and then I karate chop the weapon out of their hand, and I do this flying roundhouse kick, and I smack them in the face, and then I look around, and I don't care what it is. If it's a lamp, I'm grabbing that lamp, and that's going to be a lethal weapon all of a sudden. Right? Tell me I'm not the only one that does this, guys. I had a few, the first service, that said, yeah, I think about those things too. Like, you pick the wrong house full, and that's kind of what goes on in my head. Or we'll be like walking in the grocery store, and somebody will catch my eye. I'm like, that guy better not try anything. And he's looking at me like, who's this bearded guy eyeballing me all strange? And he puts the milk in his cart and he goes on with his life. So we think of all these ways we're going to protect our families. We even fantasize about it sometime. Like, I dare someone to mess with my little girls. I dare them. I hope they do. You know, we think about these things. But we're really not getting the whole picture of this all when we think that's all it is when it comes to protecting our families. The reality is, rural areas, and I don't have the exact numbers for Princeton, but rural areas like Princeton have an average of just about 1,900 break-ins per 100,000 inhabitants. You can fact check me, Lincoln, maybe? I don't know. So that's under 2% of homes that get burglarized. And this typically happens in the mid-afternoon, not at night whenever everybody's trying to sleep. But what do? We buy up all our guns and our ammunition, and I got a pistol under my car seat, and so I'm ready. Bring it on. Come at me, bro. And we think we're doing our part to protect our families, that we are master protectors of our domain. We even brag about threatening little boys that come over to our house to take our daughters out on a date. Like, we got our shotgun in one hand, and, hi, nice to meet you, in the other hand. Have her home by 8, or else. By the way, nobody ever better do that to my little boy. Because little boys have protective daddies too. So about 2% chance of a break-in. And that's where some of us spend all our time thinking about protecting our children. 2%. And don't get me wrong, we should be preparing to physically protect our kids. By all means, we owe it to them to prevent this kind of harm. Because there are predators out there, and some of them are preying on little kids. But don't drop your guard when it comes to protecting them from the other dangers. Those that come after all of our families, not just 2%. So going back to Matthew 18 in verse 6, Jesus says again, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea." So our job as protectors is to work against those things that come into our families' lives that cause our little ones to stumble. One translation says to sin instead of to stumble. And so here, let's think about all the people and let's think about all the things that we invite or allow into our homes, into the lives of our families, into the hearts of our children, that we give this free access to our little ones. Knowing that each one of these things has the ability to influence our children in these monumental and unforgettable ways. Children and teens who are in here this morning, I have something in this message that is especially for you. I want you to remember this. Show me your friends today, and I will show you your future. The Bible speaks to this in many areas, and I like the way that Proverbs 12:20 puts it. Become wise by walking with the wise. Hang out with fools and watch your life fall to pieces. Or 1 Corinthians 15:33. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. And what do we say in Celebrate Recovery? You change the people, places, and things. And the people, to me, is that biggest key right there. You are who you hang out with. You are the average of your 5 closest friends, which is a really good thing. Sometimes, if you have friends who are volunteering their time to help others, if they have discipline with their schoolwork, and if they have good, healthy goals for their futures. And that's really the person that I thought I was. When I was in high school, I thought I was a good guy. I thought I was thinking about my future. I mean, I got straight A's, and I was on the starting teams. But my friends were the ones that were drinking underage. They were the ones that were looking for trouble, skipping school, smoking in the bathroom. But I thought I was a good kid. And then I started doing the same things that they were doing. And I ended up finding myself later battling decades of addiction and legal issues. There's no doubt about it. If you don't choose your friends wisely, you're going to pay for it sooner or later. And I say this not to lecture you guys, but out of love, because I've been there and I've made that mistake. And I would say of my whole life, that was the biggest mistake I ever made. There are many groups of people to become friends with, and they all have their own different ways of having fun. So try placing yourself in the middle of one of these groups that has fun in a way that's not going to get you and everybody else in trouble. The parents, don't be paranoid, but also don't be naive. So be active in your children's lives enough to know who they are hanging out with. Make your house the place for your kids and their friends to hang out. Spend time with their friends. Pay attention to their behaviors. In Psalm 101:6, King David says, "My eyes will be on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. The one whose walk is blameless will minister to me." He says he will keep his eyes on the faithful in the land. In other words, he would choose as role models and as friends those who are godly and are trustworthy. Our friends and the people we spend our time with, they have a profound influence on our lives. So we need to make sure that we keep our eyes on those who are faithful to God and to His Word. So who are we keeping an eye on in our homes? Parents, is your circle of friends full of the faithful in the land? And while I made that mistake in my past life, I eventually learned to surround myself with good people. And now my friends are faithful believers in Jesus, and many of you guys. And so my kids grow up and they don't think that the only thing that adults do on the weekend is to drink. My kids see people like the Shellers, like the Lashbrooks, and the Pinkstons, and the Boyds, and so many others, and they see them actively serving other people. There was a weekend last year where I took my son with my buddy Mo Peraza to volunteer to give out food and clothing to the Vincennes homeless in the winter months. And people like that, people like you, have inspired my son. And last year, he personally raised enough money to fill a heaping load of food in a large bed of a truck, enough to donate to the Salvation Army just after Christmas. Those things don't just happen on their own. And my kids get to spend time with David DePoyster, who always kind of gets him in trouble. Always. But it's just like they're yelling too loud and they're screaming and waking babies up. But it's all in good fun. But he still gets a stink eye. And they get to see Megan pursuing her college goals. And she's showing them how important it is to pursue their dreams. And she's not 18 anymore. She's non-traditional. And it's never too late. And they're going to see that. But we are careful who we allow into their lives. And I still tell them about the other things in this world. Because I don't want them to be naive or overly sheltered. And I tell them what my life was like before Christ. Because they need to know the dangers. They need to be prepared for these things. And we're a homeschool family, not just because of COVID. We were doing it way before it was cool. So I kind of get to control the kind of person that comes into the life of my kids. And here's what we hear all the time. I homeschool my kids. Aren't you worried about them being socialized? And I say, no, they're plenty socialized. Don't worry. I push them down once a week and steal their lunch money. So they know what it's like to be in school. But what I think happens so much, and that instead of being socialized, as people put it, many children are learning to conform to the patterns of this world. Because the people that they're deciding to hang out with at a young age. And they're learning to choose their friends not based on godly character, but they're learning from a very young age to find friends who wear the right brand of shoes because they just got picked on last week for wearing a pair of knockoffs. Man, it is hard to be a kid. And it's not just the people we hang out with that matter. What kind of music are we listening to? Are we watching the news each and every night with little ears listening in? Watching with big eyes as these grown adults spit venom back and forth? Watching the world full of burning and bombed cities? I always love how on the news they spend an hour traumatizing you and then they save that happy-go-lucky story for the end. Like, this dog and cat love story is not going to undo the damage that you just did to me. It's something to think about, though. Are the programs that we watch the kind of things that might cause our little ones to stumble, to sin? And what about other forms of technology? And maybe some of you will agree with me, but I think that behind a lot of technology firmly stands Satan, who says, this territory is mine. These addictions belong to me, and I'm going to fight for every single inch. And people are spending more and more time on the screen than ever, and it's an addiction. It is. And our children are being exposed to pornography at unbelievably young ages. And not just like nude pictures, but atrocities that are beyond anything any person, let alone a child, should ever be exposed to. So, protectors, parents, influencers, we understand that we are in this incredible battle. So we have to prepare ourselves because we are up against an enemy. But what do? Well, every computer has a filter. Use it. Something simple. No TV, iPad, cell phone, or whatever in the bedroom. Period. It's a rule. No child should ever have unrestricted rights to privacy. Oh, they might say, you can't come into my room. Oh, yeah, I can. Or they might say, oh, but you don't trust me. And the answer is, of course I don't trust you. I don't trust myself. Why should I trust you? Alluding to that fallen nature of man, no matter how old we are. And it's hard to be a kid. And there's so much pressure on our little ones today, maybe more so than ever. And we as adults, we must take an active role in their lives. We can't let the preachers and the teachers raise our kids. Rules from the parents without that relationship is going to equal nothing but rebellion. It isn't simply, well, here are the rules. Yes, we need to have rules, but we have to talk as families. We have to discuss things. We have to strategize together. And if you catch your child doing something that you don't want him or her to do, don't shame them. You shame them, all they're going to learn how to do is try to not get caught next time. They're angry because they got caught. What you do instead of this antagonism, if you can pull this off, and I'm sure that it's a lot of times very difficult, but if you can do this to have such a relationship with a child that it isn't parent against child, we're the ones telling you what to do, but rather parents coming along and taking the arm of a child and saying, we're going to walk with you together through the minefields of life. And we as parents are going to always be there for you. Role play certain issues. Say, this is going to happen to you. What are you going to do when it happens? Illustrate to your children the kind of tenacity and the kind of strength and the kind of encouragement that they will need to stand against a culture that has lost its way. So protecting our families, it might not end up the plot line of this action thriller. Sometimes it might even seem mundane because a lot of things we do to protect them are things like keeping them healthy by giving them clean clothes and doing the laundry and washing their dishes and teaching them to wash their hands. And we're doing the grocery shopping for them and we're making sure that they have healthy food to eat. And we're saving for college and making them wear their seatbelts. And as fathers, we're treating our wives with love and respect so our daughters know what kind of man to look for when they get older. Maybe we won't end up having to fight a bunch of bad guys off. Maybe there won't be this wild lamp scene in our house. But protecting our children is the most important work we will ever do. And we pray for them. And we teach them. And we guard their hearts and we guard their minds from the darkness. We equip them to go forth in the world with the armor of God. We do everything in our power to remove those things that will cause them to stumble. And then someday, the goal is they find themselves making their own decisions. And protecting them doesn't mean never allowing them to make mistakes, because I know that's how I learn my lessons the best. And sometimes we can do the best job possible, and they're still going to go out and they're going to make these tragically bad decisions. But we got to try while we have them. We are called by God to be good stewards and protect them. Because in our work that we do, no ministry is more important than the one to our families. Let's pray. God, we come before you on this precious day. And as parents, we come before you every day to ask for your protection upon the youth of our church, our children, and your children, God. Guide them accordingly with your grace. Mold them into who they are destined to become. Help them become ambitious and to be excellent young role models to their peers. But most of all, give them strength to repel bad company and negative influences. And if you're here today, or if you're at home watching, I encourage you to come to the altar or to take a few moments just to hold your little ones and to pray for the specific protection that they need. And pray that they live lives that are honoring to God, that they become exactly who God intended for them to be. Won't you join me?